Imagine waking up and your leg is broken. Not sprained, not bruised, snapped completely in half. It's 40,000 years ago. There is no doctor, no hospital, no pharmacy down the road, no number to call. Just you, the pain, and a group of people who have absolutely no idea what's happening inside your body. And somehow, against every odd, you survive. Not just survive, you heal. That is not a guess. That is archaeology. And the story of how ancient humans dealt with sickness and injury is one of the most overlooked and genuinely astonishing chapters in human history. We're going to go through all of it today. Let's start with the obvious question. What did ancient humans even understand about illness? The honest answer is, more than you think, and less than you'd hope. For a long time, researchers assumed ancient humans had almost no medical understanding. That they saw sickness as punishment, as spirits, as something completely beyond their control. And while belief in supernatural causes was absolutely part of the picture, the physical evidence tells a very different story. We're going to go through all of it today. Let's start with the obvious question. What did ancient humans even understand about illness? The honest answer is, more than you think, and less than you'd hope. For a long time, researchers assumed ancient humans had almost no medical understanding, that they saw sickness as punishment, as spirits, as something completely beyond their control. And while belief in supernatural causes was absolutely part of the picture, the physical evidence tells a very different story. Ancient humans observed, constantly. They watched what plants made animals sick. They noticed which herbs reduced swelling. They learned which roots could stop bleeding. They experimented, not with lab equipment and controlled trials, but with direct experience accumulated across thousands of generations. The result was something that actually worked. Here's the part that surprises most people. Surgeries. Not metaphorical surgeries. Not crude attempts. Real, deliberate, skilled surgical procedures performed tens of thousands of years ago. The most documented is trepanation, which is the practice of drilling or scraping a hole through the human skull, while the person was alive. That sounds horrifying, but here is what makes it extraordinary. Archaeologists have found hundreds of trepanned skulls from across the world, dating back over 10,000 years, and a significant number of them show bone regrowth around the opening. Bone regrowth means the patient lived, not just for a day, for months, sometimes years after the procedure. Someone opened a human skull with a stone tool and the patient survived long enough for the bone to begin healing. That requires surgical skill, some form of pain management, and post-operative care, all of which existed. We don't know exactly why they did it, possibly to relieve pressure after head injuries, possibly to treat severe headaches or seizures, possibly for ritual reasons we can no longer reconstruct. But the outcome is clear. Ancient surgeons, working with stone, achieved results that should have been impossible. And trepanation wasn't the only procedure. Archaeologists have found evidence of amputations, of teeth being deliberately extracted, of broken bones that were set, meaning someone understood that a bone needed to be realigned before it would heal correctly, and held in place long enough to fuse. A 50,000-year-old Neanderthal skeleton found in Iraq, the same Shanidar cave from the burial evidence, shows a right arm that was so severely damaged it had been amputated above the elbow. The bone had healed. That Neanderthal lived for years after losing the arm, which means someone fed him, someone looked after him, someone kept him alive through a recovery that would challenge a modern patient. Now here's where it gets even more interesting, because it wasn't just surgery. Ancient humans had medicine, not placebo medicine, not wishful thinking, real, pharmacologically active medicine derived from plants. Researchers studying ancient human sites have found residue of specific plants on tools and in burial contexts. Yarrow, groundsel, ephedra, all of which have documented medicinal properties. Yarrow stops bleeding and reduces inflammation. Ephedra is a stimulant still used in modern medicine today. These weren't random plants. They were selected deliberately. The oldest known evidence of intentional plant medicine use pushes back over 60,000 years, which means the pharmaceutical industry did not invent medicine. It inherited it from people who spent thousands of generations figuring out which plants did what. But here's the part nobody talks about. The real medicine wasn't just the plants, it was the people. Healing in ancient communities was a communal act. When someone got sick, the group responded. They brought food, they stayed close, they kept the person warm, they reduced the physical demands on the sick individual, sometimes for weeks, sometimes for months. That kind of social support doesn't leave obvious physical evidence in the fossil record, but it leaves traces. Every ancient skeleton that shows long-term survival from a debilitating injury is a piece of evidence for a community that chose to support its sick members rather than leave them behind. We found a child in ancient Spain with a genetic condition that would have caused constant pain and mobility problems from infancy. She survived to at least 10 years old, in 40,000 BCE. That child was carried. That child was fed. That child was loved by people who had no framework for what was wrong with her, but took care of her anyway. That is the real ancient medicine. Not the surgery, not the plants. The decision to stay. Here's what the full picture looks like when you stand back. Ancient humans faced illness with the same fundamental toolkit we use today: observation, accumulated knowledge, intervention, and community care. The tools were cruder, the knowledge was incomplete, the survival rates were lower, but the impulse, the refusal to simply let a sick person suffer alone, was identical to what drives modern medicine. The doctor who treats your broken leg is doing the same thing a Neanderthal did 50,000 years ago, looking at a person in pain and deciding to do something about it. We didn't invent compassion in a hospital. We brought it with us from the cave.